Welcome to part 5 of the Dharma Yoga website series. In this video we're going to start the main website CSS style, so this will be one of two for the full width CSS, and then the last video will be our CSS for the responsiveness in the media queries. So let's go and open up the style.css document that you downloaded in the starter files. I'm going to keep index.html open so I can go back and forth and show you exactly what we're styling from the HTML and referencing in the CSS. So the first style that we'll give is for the HTML document itself. This is going to be called a reset style. So when you make a website, and if you've seen the source code of some websites, you're going to see a giant block of styles at the very top, and what that is a reset. So ours is going to be pretty simple. A reset tells the web browser to do away with margin and padding and just start from zero in case there's anything that the web browser wants to push on the website, like inherent styles. So let's give our first style the reset margin 0, border 0, and padding 0. Okay, so this we won't see any real effect on the document right now, but let's move down to the body section. So we started with just the HTML document itself, and now let's style the body. So you just want to write body, and then in our swirly brackets we're going to give it a background color. So if you remember, the background color here is it's like an off-white sort of yellow color. So we'll give it a background color of FEF BEF. So if you're unfamiliar with this type of color value, these are called hex colors. So it's really good to have something in your web browser. I use a hex color tool in Google Chrome here, or you could just do hex color chart Google search and you'll find something where you can select your colors. Okay, so next let's give it its font family. And we're going to use the Quicksand font from the Google Fonts. So just write Quicksand, and this is a sans serif font. So if the web browser doesn't recognize Quicksand, the next best font we'll tell it to use is sans serif. And then we'll give the font its size. So if we go ahead and refresh, we'll already see a little bit of effect, and there goes our font into this nice little rounded font here that I selected. Okay. And by the way, we won't see that background color in effect yet because we haven't styled the wrapper. So everything is displaying at 100% of the width because we haven't given its wrapper yet. So we'll give it a font size of 18 pixels. And then if you refresh, the font's a little larger here. So with font, you can use pixels, percentage, M, and point if you like. I typically will use pixels for fonts, and then for page elements, I'll use percentages for responsive, which is really good for responsive websites. So you can use percentage if you want for fonts, but when you use percentage, you want to add an inherent pixel font size to base the percentage off of. So if it's an 18 pixel font size that you add in the reset, for example, and you make it 200%, it's going to be a 36 pixel font size. Okay, so now let's style the heading 1. and we'll give it its font family. So it's going to be that shadows into light 2 Google font. Okay, and then we'll just tell it to use a cursive style after that. And if we refresh, our heading 1s up here will turn into this cool looking shadows into light 2 font style. Now, as you remember, the heading 1s are in the center of the page, so we'll just tell them to text align center. And if we refresh, they'll move over to the center of the page. So there's our 4 heading 1 tags we use. And see, even that one is centered in the left col section. So now let's drop down and give that a font size. So I'm going to use percentage in this case. So this will be 175%, just to show you. And then let's do a text transform, or color first rather. And we're going to give this a hex value of 78C0A8. And now the text transform. So if you remember, I said don't worry about the uppercase. This is how you make all the characters uppercase with the text transform. So let's refresh, and now we have the color and the uppercase letters, so it's looking very similar to the finished product. Next, let's add a little spacing between the letters. So we want to write letter spacing, and I'm going to give it a spacing of 3 pixels. So here you could also probably do 2 or 3% if you want to go that route, but I'm just going to stick with the pixel. And now let's give it some padding. So we'll want to tell it that we want padding top 3%, padding right 0, padding bottom 3%, and padding left 0. So it goes top, right, bottom, left. It's clockwise. And let's go ahead and refresh our page. And we'll see the padding taking place. So now we have a little bit of space at the top and bottom of the heading 1 tags. Okay, so let's drop down and style the rest of the headings. So we'll want to give our H2, H3, and H4 tags their style. So write H2, H2, H3, H4. And then let's give it the same font family. It's going to be that shadows into light 2 font. Now, let's just take a look and remind ourselves which H2s we're styling here. So write font family, shadows into light 2, and then just as above we'll give it the cursive style. Okay, and drop down a line, and we'll also tell these headings to text align center. And let's give them a color of 5E412. So 5E412F. And this is sort of this brown color that we'll see here. So if we refresh, it's going to be the same color as the navigation. And there's the brown on the finished product. So refresh, and here's the brown color. That the phone number will change later. Okay, so drop down, and let's also give this the uppercase text transformation. So right, transform, uppercase, and drop down, and let's give it some letter spacing. So right, letter spacing 1%. And let's go ahead and refresh the document now, and we'll see a little spacing added to these H2, H3, and H4. But I don't think that we might not have even used H4, I'm not sure. Okay, so now let's give the paragraphs some style. So just write P for the paragraph tag, and let's give the text some padding. So we'll give it a padding of 2%, and then refresh, and we'll see it's spaced out some. So now we have some space in between the paragraphs, not between the text itself though. And we'll also give this that same brown color as above. So we'll write color, and then it's going to be that pound 5E412F. Okay, and refresh. And there's the brown colored paragraph text. Now let's give the paragraphs its last style. So we'll just tell it to text align justify rather than center. So this will line up the text and justify it just as it would in a Word document. So if we refresh, we'll have a straight line where the text ends off to the right. I think it looks a little cleaner like this, especially with the boxy type of layout here. Okay, and let's style our images. We'll want to have them text align center. And let's give them a max width of 100%. Okay, and refresh. And we're not really going to notice the max width here, but if you have the website in the mobile version on the iPhone, it's important to have the max width, because if you don't, they're going to stretch beyond the screen. The slider we can't do anything about just yet, but the other pictures will respond to this max width 100%. So if we refresh, all of the pictures will stay within this frame here when the page is sized down. The reason there's space off to the side is because, as I said, the slider we need to style. We need to style that on its own to tell it to only display at 100% of the screen. Okay, and then let's just tell the images to have an automatic height relative to the width. So just write height auto. And let's drop down, and now we'll get started with the main sections of the page. So we're going to start with a div ID. So if you remember from earlier, div IDs are referenced with the pound symbol or hashtag if you like. So we'll style the div ID wrapper first, and then so we have the pound sign or hashtag for IDs, and then class is the period. So let's go ahead and start with the div ID wrapper. So if it were class, we just have dot wrapper, but since it's an ID, we'll write pound and wrapper. Okay, so let's give the wrapper a style of margin 0 auto. And what this tells it to do is center a line on the page. Okay, so if we refresh, it's going to be hard to tell right now because we haven't given the wrapper the width. But here, if you look, everything stays center aligned. No matter how wide the website goes, it's always going to be in the center, the entire wrapper that contains all of the page elements within the body there. Okay, so let's drop down to the next style and let's give our wrapper its width. So we want to tell it to have a max width of 1120 pixels. So if we refresh, we should see the max width here. Okay, and later we're going to style the navigation so it's not as wide as the wrapper itself. The one thing that will be as wide as the wrapper is the footer down here in this yellow type color. So now let's drop down and let's give it the background color that's the same as the body. So now this will start to take effect. So let's give it the background color of FEF BEF. And if you refresh, I'm not sure if we'll be able to tell that well since it's so subtle. So, and then let's give it an overflow of auto. And overflow auto basically tells the wrapper that if there are any elements inside of the wrapper that want to display outside of it, it will add a scroll feature, but if not, we won't notice any change. So you might want to just look up the overflow CSS style because there are several different overflows that you can use based on the elements being wider than its container. So let's give the header a width of 97% and refresh. Okay. So the header is going to sit a little narrower than the navigation here. Okay, so now let's give let's drop down to the logo. That's all we really need to do for the header. Now let's style the logo and then we'll style the callout section. So we want to write logo, and this is an ID, so we'll give it the pound symbol. And let's give the logo a style of float left. So this is our first float. Now floats will just tell them to push all the way to the left or right as far as they can go. There's no float center style though. That we use margin 0 auto for. And then let's give this a margin of 3% top, 0 right, 0 bottom, and 5% left. So refresh. And then here's the logo floating left with the padding of 5% to the left here. Okay, and now we can drop down to the callout style for the phone number and address. And this is another ID, so we want to write pound callout, open and close swirly brackets, and we'll tell it to float right. And let's give this a margin of 3% top. So we'll create a little space around it. Margin of 3% top. And 3% right, 2% bottom, and 0 left. And then let's give it a height of auto, and overflow hidden. Yeah, let's go with hidden. And then we can refresh, and it'll be off to the right side here. So now let's style the heading 2 for the phone number and the paragraph text in here. So we'll start with the phone number here, the H2. So we want to reference the callout first rather than just the H2, so it knows which H2 we're talking about. So let's write callout H2, open and close swirly brackets, and let's give this a text align center, or I'm sorry, right, and a color of 7. So this will be pound 78 C 0A8. And then let's refresh, and it's going to be that same turquoise color. Okay, so now let's drop down, and we'll want to give the phone numbers a link a style. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned with the phone number in the footer that we gave a class to, we'll want to just style the link for the phone numbers, so when you see it on cell phones, it doesn't show up as the blue hyperlink text with the line underneath. So let's give it the same style, the same color, so that's just going to be 78C 0A8. And then we'll give it one more style so it doesn't underline the text when you see it on a cell phone. And we'll give it the text decoration none style to take away the underline. So that we won't really see any effect here on the computer, but you will on your cell phone. And then we'll do that same text align, or sorry, text decoration none for the button later on. So now let's drop down and give the paragraph in the callout its style. So we'll want to just give it, we'll want it to text align center, and then we'll give it a padding of 0%, and then let's give it that orange color that it has in the finished product, which is going to be pound F0 So F07818. And then if we refresh, we should be looking about the same exact as the finished product. So if we go back and forth, we can't even tell the difference in the header now. It's aligning right up. Okay, so next let's style the banner wrapper that contains the navigation as well as the image slider. So here we have the banner wrapper ID. And this will be the last style before the navigation style start, which is already set up for us. So let's give the banner wrapper a max width of 1020 pixels. So this will be the width of the navigation and the image slider. And then if we refresh, they are aligned. We just need to center it. So let's give it the margin 0 auto style to center it on the page. And refresh. And now we can't really distinguish them at the very top, except for the hover. When you hover over it, the previous and next buttons. Okay, and now let's give it a little padding. So we'll want to give it some padding just for the bottom underneath the banner wrapper, underneath the image slider. So refresh, and then there's going to be a little padding added down here. So the reason that I'm adding some padding is so it doesn't need to be added to these 1/3 sections here. So we're just going to apply it to the image slider instead of the 1/3, because if we add it to the 1/3, down here there's going to be too much padding up top. So we'll just take advantage of the image slider to add some padding there to create some white space. Okay, so that does it for the styles before the navigation. Let's go ahead and drop down to style the image slider. So I'm just going to get rid of this extra space here, and then you'll want to just drop down below all of the navigation styles to style the image slider. So drop down, and then if you like, you can create a comment telling you where the image slider starts. So I'm going to write a little comment here saying start image slider, and then I will end the comment. And I'm actually going to pause the recording for a moment. So while I was making this, I screwed up the CSS for the image slider a few times. So rather than you guys styling my screw ups and then having to go back, here is all of the CSS for the image slider. So go ahead and just pause the screen for a few minutes and copy down all of this information. A lot of it you can copy and paste. And then once you're done, the image slider will be in full effect with the previous and next buttons, and we'll be ready to move on to the 1/3 sections below. So I will see you in part 6 of the video.